him once, and that's all you can really do at the time. But Bob was such a good guy. He actually helped me move twice, from one apartment to another. And so, yeah, we all miss Bob a lot. So with that, I'll stop and open it up for any questions you have. Any questions about this study or the PSA study?
I was interested to hear your thoughts on, there's been growing interest in midlife PSA,
Yes.
sort of to capture something similar to what you discussed. And
Yeah.
I was thinking about possibly, you know, that might take into account more, say, I guess there hasn't been very many, but there have been some environmental factors shown to influence PSA. I'm just thinking of, like, say, statin use or obesity, or that in a way could provide a good measure, or wondering how.
Yeah. So first of all, it's been shown that a single measure of PSA at midlife is a really good predictor of mortality across the So there's this movement towards you should just get one when you're 50, basically, and have that number so you know where your PSA is at. And depending on where that's at that time, could be a good indicator. But I think your second point is that the model I've used is just genetics, but we shouldn't be incorporating more information, right? And trying to come up with a overall kind of holistic model that kind of reflects different factors that will impact PSA besides just cancer. It is interesting though, the PSA is very misaligned, but it works pretty well. That's the interesting thing about it. If we discovered a biomarker like PSA right now, we would be extremely excited. I think the bigger issue is the treatment and the overtreatment. So knowing PSA and knowing someone has cancer isn't really the problem. Doing unnecessary biopsies is a problem because that can have side effects. So doing biopsies for men who don't need a biopsy, but once you have a PSA detected cancer, it's what you do next, I think, is kind of a little bit more the controversy of, treating every man the same. Yeah.
I have kind of a related question. So, you had multiple measurements of PSA, sometimes from the Kaiser data.
Yeah.
Was that informative enough to look at not just the kind of a point value, but a change over time and predict that with the genetics?
Yeah. So we actually are right now working on another project. So what we ended up doing was this GE thing, which is kind of taking the median. We looked at a lot of different things. The earliest PSA, the mean PSA, the most recent PSA. But right now what we're doing is looking at PSA trajectory and trying to separate out the intercept from the slope, basically, right? And it looks like most of the prediction is coming. So we redid the GWAS with a model that's actually more of a random effects model that has an intercept and slope in it. And we found a couple of new things, which is nice that we didn't find with this analysis. But what also looks like it's the slope that is where we're finding most of the genetic factors. Yeah, not the intercept. But yeah, that's a good question.
I think a lot of the genetic studies have not included information on things like how often people are screened, or they've tended to ignore screening adherence in the two groups. Do you think, in light of this, I think this may also apply in other screen-detected cancers too, but should that be considered more routinely as some of the either modifiers, or should we be thinking more about how to incorporate screening information in genetic
studies? In the genetic studies?
Yeah.
Well, you have to think that screen-detected cancers are different than clinically presenting cancers, right? And,
which they often are, right?
They often are, yeah. But I do think that, whether it's effect modification, so how to think of it, that I think it would be good to incorporate that, because it may very well be that there's different genetic determinants of those different types of cancers. But it's not. I mean, you think about all these GWAS, even the GWAS product, they don't take that into account at all. Yeah. although with the KLK3 finding, when that was first reported as a novel genetic variant for prostate cancer, there was quite a bit of discussion about that study because the controls, they decided they were going to have super controls, people with really low PSA levels, right? So that's how the sample was collected. Everyone had to have a low PSA to be the control. And what did they find? The gene that encodes the PSA protein. And so there was, in that case, there was a lot of discussion and kind of a, I think the people who found the gene didn't like to hear this, but everyone else is saying, wait a minute, your design was set up to find a PSA gene because you're comparing people with low PSA to people with high PSA, regardless of cancer.
That was a great talk, John. I have two questions, one about you and one about Bob. Bob, in addition to being a surfer, had been a lifeguard. How about you?
I was a lifeguard, but I was only ever a lifeguard at a swimming pool.
Me too. I don't think that should count.
It was the easiest job in the world. You're at a beach, that's a hard job.
Yeah.
I was a lifeguard. There's three of them.
They should have different names for those.
Yeah.
The other one is, I remember meeting Robert Hale and his wife you were still a student, like 94 or so, I guess. And they had, if you are on the faculty at UCLA, the question is where are you going to live? Where are you going to be able to afford to live, right? So they had started out in the way out in the valley, and they had spent a decade flipping houses, basically. So she told us, or told me, that they basically lived in a construction site for a decade, a different one every year. So they bought a house, sold it, bought a house, sold it, and they were Robert was walking to work in Westwood on a faculty salary after 10 years of this. So my question is, how often did Bob help them?
Well, he was such a nice guy, probably pretty many.
Probably every time, right?
Yeah, he probably lifted a hammer.
He helped me put in my mailbox out at the main road when I moved here. So.
Yep. He's the kind of guy.
Any other questions? If not, let's thank John again.
Thank you.
I should say I did purposely wear this color shirt. Because I know.
Yeah.